So we finally know who was responsible for the Shedeur Sanders prank call, with an apology being issued and a certain NFL team even issuing a statement of their own. Well, even with all that, opinions vary widely on what should actually happen as a result of this. So in today's video, I'll break down what's going on and give some thoughts about it, talk about an injury scare that happened with the high-profile free agent signing, Derek Carr speaking out about his shoulder injury from a church pulpit, draft grades, and more right after. Alright, first up, we got to talk about the Shedeur Sanders draft night prank call situation, because we know now who was behind it. We all know that Shedeur was pranked initially because the call was caught on a live stream from his perspective and shared online. I mean, it was kind of messed up to get a prank call like that, but honestly, that might have been the end of the story for the most part if the guys behind this didn't film themselves doing it and then it proceeded to get leaked online. I don't know who decided to release this video, but they were absolute idiots for doing so, because it literally exposed who was making these calls. So when this went out or became available, it went viral, and you can hear the entire conversation crystal clear. The guy who called him pretended to be the Saints GM, Mickey Loomis, and actually told him they were going to take him with their next pick. Well, after this, Shedeur responded saying, "Yes, sir, let's be legendary." The guy then in the Ole Miss sweater said, "You're going to have to wait a little longer, man. Sorry about that." Then hung up, with everybody in the room laughing about it. Well, buckle up, because this is where things get a little bit crazy. The number they called is actually a secure number, or at least it was supposed to be, with only NFL teams having access to those numbers for players that could be getting drafted. Well, the person who was behind leaking Shedeur's number was actually Jax Ulbrich, the son of new Falcons defensive coordinator Jax Ulbrich. You can see him in the video sitting there, and he ended up getting recognized once the video was leaked. And he did attempt to own up to the entire situation, posting a public apology on his Instagram. He called his actions embarrassing and shameful, apologizing to Shedeur for messing with his moment. And I appreciate that he went public with an apology, but look at this. In the original post, he actually misspelled Shedeur's name before eventually deleting it and re-uploading it with the correct spelling. Of all the words to get right, it should probably be the person's name, but I suck at spelling myself, so who am I to judge? Then around the same time, the Atlanta Falcons themselves released a statement explaining how it all went down. In it, they say that Jax Ulbrich unintentionally, came across the draft contact phone number for Shedeur off of an open iPad while visiting his parents' home, and he wrote it down to later conduct the prank call. It's worth noting that the Falcons don't appear to be taking any action against Jax Ulbrich himself, saying he was unaware of the data exposure or what even happened until after the fact. Well, obviously, it's a little careless to leave an iPad open with that sensitive information on it, but he was also in the privacy of his own home, and I would assume he didn't expect for somebody in his own family to leak the info and make prank calls. So some of the blame does fall on Ulbrich, but not enough, in my opinion, to justify any real repercussions, if any at all. Opinions on this, by the way, are all over the place. Some think Ulbrich himself should be facing consequences, and the entire Falcons organization on top of that, talking about suspending Jax from attending any NFL event for the next couple of years, heavily fining the Falcons. I mean, thoughts vary widely on what should actually happen. We know how social media can get, everyone going to one extreme or the other. The other extreme, to me at least, are the people who saying, who cares? He was just a kid pulling a harmless prank. He meant nothing by it. I mean, these guys are not kids. They are 21-year-old men. And when you're pranking a player like this, these players have been waiting for a call like this their entire lives, are extremely nervous, and are just so excited to finally get that call, and for it to actually be a prank. It's pretty messed up. We all know that. Now, it's worth mentioning that Shedeur himself actually responded to the whole situation saying, quote, "It didn't really have an impact on me. I think, of course, it is childish. I feel like it was a childish act, but everybody does childish things here and there." So I think Shedeur handled it pretty well, and while this story really blew up because the video of the actual callers got leaked, he's not the only player who got pranked this year during the draft. It probably happened to even more players than this, but we at least know that Colts tight end Tyler Warren and Bills offensive lineman Chase Lunt both claim to have received prank calls while waiting to be drafted. That does kinda make me wonder if Jax wrote down more than just Shedeur's number, but it's impossible to know that for sure. The NFL is currently looking into the entire situation, so we'll see what else comes from this, if anything at all. Prank calls like this, by the way, have happened over the years. This is nothing new. For example, just last year, very recent example, Cooper DeJean was on camera answering a call that also turned out to be a prank. So while it is messed up, it does indeed happen. But that's where I want to get your guys' thoughts on the matter. Where do you lean on this entire situation? Is Jax an idiot, but probably shouldn't face any real consequences? Same with the Falcons and their defensive coordinator. Or what do you think should actually happen here? Let me know your thoughts either way in the comments down below. Next up, a high-priority free agent the Broncos signed to a multi-year deal recently had an injury scare. Linebacker Dre Greenlaw. He signed a 3-year, $31.5 million deal this offseason with the Denver Broncos, and he is a guy with a little bit of an injury history, to say the least, over the years. He's had multiple leg and calf strains, plus that Achilles tear he suffered running onto the field during Super Bowl 58 between the Chiefs and the 49ers. So, of course, everyone was holding their breath, basically, when reports came out after the draft that Dre Greenlaw suffered a serious quad injury while working out and could miss substantial time as a result. But not so fast, because after that, reports sort of got conflicted. Jennifer Lee Chan, a beat reporter for the 49ers, initially reported things as what looked like worst case scenario, but the idea that he could miss some serious time at least was quickly shut down by multiple people. Zach Stevens is a beat reporter for the Broncos, and he said that he did indeed suffer a quad strain while working out, but he is not expected to miss any part of the season. He goes on to say that he'll work his way back during the offseason program and will be ready to go for training camp with his season not being impacted at all. Josina Anderson then backed this report, basically echoing the same thing. So it looks like Broncos fans get to breathe a sigh of relief after all. But hey, speaking of conflicting injury reports, I want to talk about this Derek Carr clip that surfaced from yesterday when he was actually preaching at a church in Las Vegas. He popped up in the news a few weeks ago after a report kind of came out of nowhere saying he's dealing with a shoulder injury that could threaten his availability for the 2025 season. Some people, including Diana Rossini, threw out the idea that Carr could be fabricating his injury or at least blowing it a bit out of proportion, and this is his attempt at controlling the situation and his potential future with the team. Well, here's what Pastor Carr had to say in response to that on Sunday.
Yes, I have a shoulder injury. Despite what ESPN says and what some lady on a podcast might think. I have an MRI report to prove it. The team knows about it. We've been in constant communication. There's nothing wrong. We're figuring it out, and we're going to go forward with that. Is that okay?
Well, there you go. While the status of Derek Carr still remains a mystery as far as how things are going to look for him this season and how much he will play, if at all, it seems like he's been nothing but straightforward with the Saints and in constant communication with them this entire time, and that seems much more in line with the character he's exhibited over the years. The Saints did draft quarterback Tyler Shuck 40th overall, and so the plan could be a Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck combo if Derek Carr ends up needing to get the shoulder operated on and miss some real playing time. And speaking of former Raiders, one of Derek Carr's teammates, wide receiver Hunter Renfrow, is actually making a comeback to the NFL. He's signing with the Carolina Panthers, which is actually his childhood team, as he's from South Carolina and went to college at Clemson, which is 3 hours from Charlotte. He took the entire 2024 season off after being released by the Raiders following a disappointing final 2 years with the team. He missed 7 games due to injury in 2022, but played all 17 games in 2023, yet finished with just 51 catches for 585 yards and 2 touchdowns across both seasons combined. Some of that is because the Raiders had no consistency really at all. Head coach, quarterback, none of it, but it was still quite the fall from grace after he had a career year in 2021. The guy hauled in 103 passes for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. Well, hopefully the year off did him some good, and he can find some success with the Panthers. He does join a pretty loaded offense with them, in my opinion. They have Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and the newly drafted Tet McMillan as receiving weapons for the third-year quarterback Bryce Young, a team I'm honestly pretty excited about for the 2025 season. Speaking of wide receivers, Bills GM Brandon Beane recently went on a local Buffalo radio station and kind of went off on the reporters who were interviewing them. Apparently, he didn't like what they had to say before he hopped on the call about the Bills not really addressing wide receiver in the draft. I mean, they did draft wide receiver Caden Prather in the 7th round, but outside of tight end Jackson Hawes, who's really a blocking tight end anyway, being drafted in the 5th round, the Bills went heavy on adding to their defense. Anyway, when Beane hopped on this phone interview, he was clearly bothered by what was said, starting out the call by going on a rant about why the offense isn't an issue to be worried about.
You just saw us lead the league in points when you add all the postseason. No one scored more points. You just saw us do it without Stephon Diggs, same group. how is this group not better than last year's group? Our job is to score points and win games. Where do we need to get better? Defense. We did that. So I get it. You got to have a show, but bitching about wide receiver is one of the dumbest arguments I've heard.
I mean, he's not really wrong here. They put up over 30 points per game last year, but were 12th and 16th in points and yards allowed on defense. That's exactly why they went defense with their first 5 picks and why 6 of their 9 selections were defensive players. The defense has ultimately been their Achilles heel over the years, especially in the playoffs. I mean, think of the 13-second game against the Chiefs. Josh Allen led another scoring drive. With 13 seconds left, we're up by 3. What else is he actually supposed to do there? Then last year, they clearly struggled on defense once again, so addressing that side of the ball in the draft is way more important. Sure, the Bills' wide receiver room isn't insane. Khalil Shakir is a decent wide receiver for sure, above average, but then you have Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman. He looked okay his rookie year. He'll probably take a step up. And then they signed Joshua Palmer in free agency, and that's the primary guys in the room, but they do have James Cook, very dynamic running back in the backfield, and a great tight end duo in Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. However, it looks like they are trying to still add to the room because former Jets and Browns receiver Elijah Moore visited with them shortly after Brandon Beane scolded those radio hosts. He's a fine addition, I suppose, averaging around 600 yards a season over the last 2 years in Cleveland with pretty subpar quarterback play. And then here's a little post-draft takeaways on teams that got the most value from their draft picks based on where players were ranked on consensus big boards. The Arizona Cardinals are first, the Browns are second, then the Chiefs, Falcons, and Eagles are after that, and so on and so forth. The Cardinals make sense as the top value team here. They drafted cornerback Will Johnson 47th overall after he had been consistently getting ranked as a top 10 to top 15 prospect. Then the Browns skyrocketed up this chart solely because of the Shedeur Sanders pick and him falling in the draft. He was seen as QB2 or QB3 on most big boards, with the exception that he'd either be a late first-round pick or a second-round pick. Instead, he fell to Cleveland in the 5th round. So check out the same chart, but without the Shedeur pick. The Browns dropped from number 2 down to number 10 in terms of value. Then check the 49ers all the way at the bottom of this list, with it really not being particularly close. They had 11 picks in the draft, but apparently reached on quite a few of those, at least to the opinions of many draft analysts. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. Teams typically value players a lot differently than most mock drafts. We really won't know who won or lost this draft for a couple of years anyway. But check this one out. I like this one even more. Renee Bugner, he put together this in-depth chart ranking how teams did in the draft based on grades from analysts all around the league. He took all the grades and averaged them to make a GPA for every team. Well, most think the top 5 drafts from teams were the Patriots, then Giants, Seahawks, Chiefs, and Eagles, while the bottom 5 were the Saints, Vikings, Lions, Dolphins, and then Bengals all the way at the bottom. Well, I'm sure Cincy fans are loving, sarcasm, seeing their team at the bottom because they really need some of their picks to hit, the defensive ones specifically. But hey, let me know your thoughts on which teams you think had the best drafts and also the worst based on their picks. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.